Happy Hump Day, folks. Happy Wednesday. Good Wednesday morning to you. This is digital meteorologist David Nazario back in the Digital Weather Center, as always, for our 11:30 update. There we go. It just struck 11:30. I started a minute or so early because there's a lot we got to talk about today, and we're going to rock right into it. So thank you so much for joining us over on News 6 Plus, and thank you for those of you tuning in over on our YouTube channel. We're going to go ahead and jump right into this because there is a lot that I want to cover for you all, especially over the coming days. You'll only have me one more time tomorrow at 11:30 since I'll be on the night side broadcast spectrum on Friday. I'm going to be doing the TV shows at 6, 6:30, and 11 o'clock. So if you want to tune in and get a different perspective or a different lens on your weather, feel free to. Definitely. The rest of us at the Pinpoint Weather Center are going to be digging into everything that we have to discuss. So right off the rip, here we go. The next big thing. And once again, you're very familiar with this graphic. If you've been following us for a little bit now, notice that there isn't anything particular in terms of a headline. It's just the next big thing. And I kind of wish I could add an S to the end of thing because we have some big things flying at us for all intents and purposes. Let's get into them, shall we? So today, we're still warming up. The hottest day will come tomorrow with a twist. And then tomorrow we have the record temps possible with some storms in the mix. So yes, in fact, we've seen our rain chances only continue to climb as we've gone over the past 36 hours. A couple of new renditions from our higher resolution models for tomorrow afternoon are not only indicating the threat that we could see the 90-degree temps finally arise for the first time in 2025. That would be the earliest onset of 90-degree weather here in Central Florida. That's already historical in of itself. But on top of that, we could actually get a little bit of that late spring, pseudo summertime sea breeze action, especially along our east coast. There could be a little bit of an unzipping pattern going on along our east coast for portions of Osceola, maybe the far eastern extent of Orange County, getting into Brevard, Volusia County before our next frontal system comes down, which is what's helping to drive all these daytime mechanisms and why a lot of us are going to feel like we're in the 90-degree threshold regardless if the actual air temperature actually does reach that per the thermostat. And then last but not least, this weekend. This weekend is truthfully going to be very interesting, and it could get very sporty for us folks. As you can see there, we are pinpointing the potential for some strong storms on Sunday. I'm not going to sound the alarm prematurely on severe weather, although I'll be honest with you, this is exactly the same type of setup we saw, I want to say, maybe 3 or so weeks ago when I was filling in for a weekend morning show and everything broke loose, for lack of a better term, if you know what I'm saying. All chaos erupted at around the 7 o'clock time frame. The sun came up with the approach of our next frontal system. We were warm, very humid. You could feel the winds already out there cranking out of the south. And as a result, we had 70, 80 mile an hour winds with an occasional funnel cloud or two and a couple tornado warnings as the day went on. I believe this was a Sunday towards the middle portions of January. And so as a result, that's why I'm going to keep a close eye on it as well as the rest of my teammates on the broadcast side of things. We're going to be dialing in your forecast as we go through tomorrow and especially Friday, and we can get a closer look using some of our higher res models. Now, of course, this wouldn't be a morning weather update if we didn't move on to the water vapor satellite. And I'll take you full screen because you guessed it, we got to do some doodling. We got to draw some things in on here because there's a lot going on despite the fact that this satellite only shows browns, yellows, and blues. So first things first, here we are, obviously. We're down here in the southeast, still hanging out, not a whole lot going on. You can see that big old ridge sitting overhead right there, continuing to pump those subtropical slash tropical conditions into Central Florida. The humidity is cranking. The temperatures are going to get into the upper 80s for many of us in our viewing area and across the Florida Peninsula to its entirety. But then we have storm numero uno right here. It is getting underway over Oklahoma, Texas, and parts of Kansas, where we have snowfall actually going on right now over parts of Nebraska, the Colorado Front Range. Our interview yesterday, I just spoke with Dr. Klotzbach up there, Phil, out in the Colorado Front Range, and he told me the temperature at his house is a whopping 1 degree. So we have some cold temps coming down with this winter system. And you can see as well, the jet is screaming out of the southwest, moving off towards the northeast, supporting our baroclinic signature here. And when I say baroclinic signature, that's this guy right here. Let me grab my pen tool. This guy right there. So anytime you see this kind of arcing or bowing feature on your satellite, kind of looks like a boomerang when I draw it in like that, that is the indication that we have a developing storm system, an area of low pressure. They're called mid-latitude cyclones because they form in the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, and they ride that polar front jet because, again, they love those temperature gradients. We have lots of cold air funneling in through the Rockies, and then we have tremendous amounts of warmth over the southeast, which is why we already have round one of our severe weather criteria getting underway for Louisiana, for all of the Dixie Alley area, I should say, Texarkana, Louisiana, getting into Mississippi, and it only gets worse from there. We're going to be watching what happens west of this system as the third, and I think the whopper of all of our storm systems begin to get underway. Now, I know this might look a little weird for some of you, and I wrote an article on clickorlando.com. The Gulf is cooking. And when I say that, I mean quite literally. Maybe not, cooking up burgers or steaks or anything like that, but you all know what I mean. If you look out there over the Gulf right now, sure, the shelf waters, as they're called, along the western Florida coastline, getting out into the eastern Gulf, they are a little cooler, thanks to our air mass changes that we've had get going over the last month and a half, give or take. But it's been a little bit since we've had a front come through. And if you look out there, we have some deep, vibrant shades of reds, even getting into the white colors right there in association with the loop current coming up out of the Caribbean, as well as just these warmer temps that have been engulfing, no pun intended, the Gulf. So why do I bring this up? It's not for the tropics, I promise. It's not for the tropics. However, if you look, and that's why I have the Storm Prediction Center overlay for the day today right up there, for parts of Alabama and Mississippi, we have a level 3 enhanced risk for some strong storms. And these are garden variety storms, large hail, sporadic tornadic activity. There will likely be touchdowns ongoing through the day today. I bring this up because those warm anomalies are going to pay dividends in not only our local weather, but what the spring has in store for us. If these waters don't come down, if unfortunately Punxsutawney Phil is incorrect in his wintertime prediction, extending it by about 6 weeks, then those waters will stay elevated in terms of temperatures, and they will create more tornadic conditions and supercellular activity for our friends up there to our northwest, which also means our temperatures are going to stay much warmer, and we'll see more of the thunderstorm activity with each of these passing frontal systems make their way into central Florida. Early on, if you recall, back in December, January, we had fronts coming through, but they all just kind of died off before they got into Florida. That was because we didn't have the dynamics or the ingredients to put those storms back together again along the leading edge of that cold air mass coming down with the front. And on top of that, the timing just wasn't so great. They would come through during the coolest portions of the overnight hours between 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. The sun's not up. We had a lot of the cooling take place after the sun had set. We irradiated a lot of the daytime sunlight that helped to warm the surface of central Florida. That could be different, not only with this one for tomorrow as it makes its way through our neighborhood, but then with Sunday, the next storm system coming up. And when we come back from our break here in about another 5 minutes or so, I'm going to go straight into third-party websites so I can blast through all the data that I want to show you all today. So that's the only reason I'm bringing this up. Head on over to clicko.com, clickorlando.com if you'd like to read more on the ocean-atmosphere connection, which basically describes how the ocean and our weather act as one. When something happens in one department, the other has to respond accordingly. Here's a live look at our radar. Right now, we're calm, cool, and collected. I shouldn't say cool. That's definitely inaccurate. But you guys understand what I'm saying. But if I zoom out, look at what's going on up here. Lots of action going on for Louisiana, for all of the deep south. Again, I'm not going to name individual states. You can see we have some freezing rain, sleet possibly ongoing as well for Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, Oklahoma getting in on the mixed wintry precip, and then to the north of there, now bleeding into Missouri as well, and parts of Iowa just behind where that radar banner is. We've got a lot of snowfall, and this is only round 2. We have a few more rounds coming in, as well as a couple of low-latitude systems that I'm tracking as well. And so despite what I had mentioned about the Gulf, we are looking at hopefully getting some relief. If you head on over to my TikTok, WXCenter_Nazario, I broke down how our pattern is going to flip upside down once again. For about 2 or so weeks now, we've had a negative Pacific North American oscillation, which is characterized by a big old dominant ridge of warmth over us, and then the trough of colder air being back over the western United States for California, the Rockies, the Four Corner states, and so on. But as we get past February 18th, that's kind of the deadline right there. February 18th and on is when that pattern is really going to shift, and each of these individual low pressure systems, the winter storms coming across Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, you name it, it's helping to kind of tug at that colder air that's still hanging out up to our north over the Canadian provinces. And as that polar vortex, which is still undergoing that breakdown, remember, if you guys recall, over on clickorlando.com, I have another article describing how the polar vortex was going to split. It's all finally happening. So we saw this coming 1,000 miles away. We're finally getting into it. Now, the back end of February is going to be very interesting. If I switch over to our precip outlook, you can see despite the La Nina winter that we're in, we're looking at above average precip down here for the state of Florida and for a large majority of us in the south and up the mid-Atlantic coastline, which leads me right into our pinpoint accurate forecast. We're going to get that out of the way early just so you can kind of see the wicked, wacky weather that we have ahead for the next 7, if not 14 days. So today, highs in the upper 80s. Thursday, you can see our chances for rain have bumped up to about 40%. So around 40% of our viewing area is likely to see some rainfall with that high temperature at the 90-degree threshold before we come down just a little bit for your Friday rebound in between storm systems by Saturday. Looking pretty good if you're going out to the Xfinity race like myself or the Truck Series race in the evening at Daytona. And then it looks like Sunday is going to be the kicker. Now, in terms of our NASCAR fans out there, I'm not expecting a whole washout. It's not going to be one of those days where the rain just sticks around and you're likely going to have your plans postponed to Monday. That all does depend on how fast this front will move through. We have some discrepancies with our big heavy hitter models. The Euro keeps the driving force behind pushing that cold air into Central Florida trucking. So it's going to get it through our viewing area during the warmest parts of the day, between 11 a.m. and about 2 p.m., give or take, which could result in stronger storms, more coverage in that rain right along the leading edge of that front. But once it rips through, we're going to clear up, it'll cool down, and after those jet dryers get done with the track, we should see an evening race, which I personally don't mind. I've been there, done that, where it's been delayed during the first half of the day, and then just as the lights are kicking on and the sun is setting, they're off to the races, the green flag is out. And then notice between Sunday and Monday, we go from 84 with chances for rain and storms down to 68 on Monday to start next week. So there's a lot going on, folks. And then again, Tuesday and forward, you can see already we're warming back up by 5 to 7 degrees per day, just getting right back to where we've been sitting for the last 2 weeks, give or take. So don't go anywhere. We still have a lot to cover. It's 42 after. I'm going to try to consolidate as much as I can in about 10 minutes. We're going to take our first 2-minute break. And when we get back, we're going to dial in all the mechanisms behind why it is our weather is misbehaving and as aggravated as it is right now. So stay tuned. Maybe grab a little snack or a refresher if you'd like, and we'll be right back with y'all. All right, and welcome back. 2 minutes are up, and we're now back to one of my go to websites, Cyclonic Weather, and we're looking at the latest GFS model in front of us. This is the American model. And I need to putz around with some of these vMix overlays just so I can take it full screen even here as well, and you don't have to look at me off to the left-hand side. You can focus on the data that I'm presenting, but I'll go ahead and work on that behind the scenes over the next several days, especially amidst everything that's going on. So you can see here for the latest GFS that's currently coming in right now, we have about 270 hours worth of data. So we're going to look mid to long range and see what's coming down the pike, because beyond Sunday, there's still more that I'm watching, and I will be watching feverishly. So if you are tuning in and you can't find me here on News 6, head on over to my personal social medias. We're always doing live streams. We're always having conversations, and I'm always updating you all hour by hour, or at the minimum day to day. This is where we stand right now. You can see the model is doing very well in highlighting that storm system that's getting going over the Central Plains, impacting pretty much the entirety of the eastern United States. This is as we go through the day tomorrow and into Thursday night. Notice we get that tail end of the front to come down and bring up our moisture. So with that heat in place as well tomorrow, getting those 90-degree temps with a little bit of extra lift and a nudge from the moisture department, we're probably going to see some storms. And that's why we have our rain chances sitting at about 40, maybe even 50%, depending on how much of that holds together. From there, we very quickly transition to what's called return flow. If you look to the left-hand side, where you can start to see a little bit of the greens and a little bit of the yellows beginning to form up over Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, notice the black lines there. They're oriented more or less south to north. We have that big old area of high pressure just to the northeast of our Great Lakes. You can see that 1039 blue H up over Quebec. The clockwise flow around that is what's pulling in all that warm, moist tropical air over the Gulf, in the Gulf, over the Yucatan, out of the Caribbean. That's why I brought up those temperature anomalies earlier. It's pulling all that stuff northward. And you can see as we go through the late in the day, Friday into Saturday morning, we already have some rainfall beginning to get going. And then by Saturday afternoon, this is when I do think we're going to have more or less a severe weather outbreak on our hands as the system gets cranking. I mean, really cranking. If you look at the central pressure already, we're down to 998 millibars, which, to put it into perspective for my native Floridians who may not dabble with winter storms too frequently, that's already solid tropical storm level intensity if we were talking a tropical cyclone. And it only gets stronger from there. You can see down to 995, 991, and then 986 by the time it turns into a bona fide nor'easter per the GFS. This is where we get a little bit of a break in our continuity between the European model and the GFS, which are our two main heavy hitters we typically rely on. If you notice, once again, look at that pressure gradient, those black lines through the Central Plains, through Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, Wisconsin, and all the way down to the Gulf. They're still north to south, but since they're on the backside of our counterclockwise low, we have northerly winds. And if you notice, the strongest winds pushing that front along stay through the mid-Atlantic, South Carolina, North Carolina, and so on. That's what's driving that cold air to wrap around the low pressure itself. Whereas the tail of the front that's over central Florida, if you look over the Florida Peninsula and the eastern Gulf, see how the black lines, they kind of split, they diverge? That means we're transitioning from a cold front that's actually moving to a stationary boundary. And that's why if you look, the GFS does have some rain in there for Sunday, but not nearly as intense as the Euro, which I'll pull up here in a second. And this is where it gets interesting, because when the stream first started, I didn't have a chance to look long range, but I'm watching for something to form over Texas, and there she goes. So we get another low-latitude system that moves right into the Gulf, and this could be another healthy dose of rain, if not thunderstorms for us, depending on how much our environment rebounds by the time we get into middle next week. So the warmth is going to return. We're literally going to be flying at the seat of our pants. Hold on to your butts, because we're going to be going back and forth with this pseudo springtime storm system pattern / winter trying to make its presence known for us as we go through the rest of February. And I know this seems like we're looking a far ways out, but this is only about 150, 160 hours into the future. Still seems far away. But usually by about the 200-hour, 250-hour mark, forget it after 300. This is where the GFS will throw a Cat 5 into your backyard. That's when the models will rapidly change, and you don't want to trust them too much. But within the 5 to 7 day threshold, this is only a week away, less than a week away. you can start to kind of get the general idea of what's happening. And we have a fourth storm system and possibly a fifth right behind there. Look at that. Another one coming out of the Gulf because of where our jet stream is positioned. Now, this is where you want to kind of, okay, had the guard up, now we're dropping it because this is 200 plus hours out, so this is definitely going to change. If I switch over to the European model and show you all what that model is thinking, you can see same general characteristics with our current storm system. And then as we wander into the weekend, note what happens here. See how the European model keeps that front trucking through Florida. You can see those isobars right behind where that green line is, showing where the cold front itself is driving our storms. It keeps that air, it keeps the wind flow punching that system through Florida, which is why the Euro, alongside it coming through during the warmest parts of the day, does carry with it a bit of a stronger signal for not only heavier rainfall, but that potential for a moderate, if not even an occasional severe thunderstorm with what's expected to show up. Here's SPC. Before we get ready to close out, SPC does have that level 3 out there for the deep south, the southeast right now. For day 2, our friends up there in the Tallahassee area, Apalachicola, Panama City, you name it, the Panhandle just shy of the Big Bend are under a level 1 risk, which is a staple for when these storm systems come through. You will get some bleed over. And then we also have this on day 4. Let me pull that up. So this is big, and I know it's only orange and it's far from Central Florida, but hear me out. Whenever Storm Prediction Center has something like this on their extended charts, not only does that mean confidence is high, but when you get a 30% slapped on there at 6, 5, and 4 days out, that usually means we're looking at a very strong system. This is where you will have that scattered as opposed to isolated severe thunderstorm coverage, and I do not see why they would not extend it further into Georgia, Florida, and so on and so forth. Right now, they're saying predictability too low because of that split I showed you in our model data. We got to give it till about Friday. Then we'll have our 3-kilometer models, our higher resolution thunderstorm models we can dive into and see what's ahead for Saturday and especially Sunday. Wow. So I know I just fire hosed you with all things atmospheric science. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, I do see Atmospheric Purgatory 2 over on our YouTube channel. Hey, David, remember me? I think so. The username sounds very familiar. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. Happy to get back to you, or check me out on any of my personal social media sites, WXCenter_Nazario, short for Weather Center Nazario, or just drop a comment in the comments section down below with this live stream upon its conclusion, especially if you're over on News 6, the News 6 Plus app. Definitely come on over, have a conversation. Let's get some questions answered if you may have any, especially if you've got Valentine's Day plans on Friday, extending them out through Saturday, and then if you're taking part in the race day on Sunday. We've got some big events and some big things up and coming for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then even next week is looking fairly sporty. But until then, we'll see you again tomorrow at 11:30, same time, same place here in the Digital Weather Center. I did it right this time as opposed to start with my left hand. And thank you so much for taking some time out of your hump day, your Wednesday morning, to join me here in the Digi Weather Center and talk weather with me. We'll see you again tomorrow, and we'll have a lot more information readily available for Thursday, as well as during our evening broadcasts on Friday. I'm sure the rest of my wonderful team are going to be talking about this as well, so you can get all your pinpoint accurate weather information here at News 6. But until we meet again, folks, this is the Digital Weather Center, signing out.